Hello, welcome to my year in review. So before I kind of jump in and I talk about the programs and products that I've taken throughout the course of 2025 to get me to where I am today, I wanted to talk a little bit about where I was at the very beginning of 2025. So yeah, I was not in a good place at the beginning of this year. I was so sick that I couldn't work consistently. You know, I used to sit down and do these weekly updates all throughout 2024 and then also 2025. And during that time, especially in the beginning of this year, I could not work consistently. The work was really, really difficult for me. I had a hard time putting my thoughts into words. I would, lose my train of thought a lot. I'd stumble over my words. I'd say the wrong thing. I wouldn't be able to remember everything I wanted to talk about. It was kind of a nightmare, honestly. And, it's funny because really those weekly updates, all they are is me coming on here telling you what I did for the week. And it would take me hours to get through just one of those. So really difficult. I'd work for one day and then I'd have to take like 2-3 days off to rest. It really was a very difficult time. So and some of that had to do with the fact that I was still living in mold. Like I was still living in toxic mold. So if one of your root causes of being ill is toxic mold exposure, you're simply not going to get much better living in the same environment you got sick in, which was what I was trying to do at that time. So that was still definitely a problem. I was overweight. I weighed in probably 150 pounds. And that weight is actually after I had lost weight with a peptide stack called Gut Feeling from Integrated Peptides. So I weighed less than when I started, but it didn't seem to matter what I did. It didn't matter what I ate, if I could bring myself to exercise, if I could bring myself to intermittent fast. It didn't matter. I was too sick to really go on any other kind of diet other than what I was eating. And I was eating a whole foods diet and I didn't touch carbs. So it's like, where do you cut the corners? It's not like I was eating dairy or anything either. It was just vegetables and protein and that was it. I really couldn't even tolerate fruit back then. So the weight thing was definitely something that weighed on me. And what made that even more frustrating, I think, was my inability to exercise at both the intensity and the duration that I wanted to exercise. So 2024, you can see right here to my left, I went through the Mitochondria and Drainage Jumpstart program from Dr. Peter Kahn. That's where I got the neurometabolic roadmap. And that program was amazing because it helped me to rebalance my blood sugar. He was able to start getting me to exercise without setting off my chronic fatigue syndrome. And that's kind of how I got the ball rolling. So I went back and I checked my step history to see how many steps I was getting about this time last year. And it was about 3,000 to 4,000 on average a day. And I remember going through that and it was unbelievably hard. Like I was sore all the time. Everything hurt. I had to push so hard just to get those steps in. And I had to also be really careful because if I went over too many steps or if I got my heart rate up too high, I would be laid out with post-exertion malaise for my chronic fatigue syndrome. So it was it was a balancing act that I had to kind of keep going, as I walked the tightrope of chronic illness. And it was all very, very difficult. I also, what feeds into all of that as well is the GI issues and just the limited diet. You don't realize how important food is until you can no longer eat the things you want or eat at social events or hell, even go to social events. Like food is a very social thing. So some of the GI issues I had a lot of distension, a lot of gut pain, a lot of constipation, slowed gut motility, low stomach acid, gut dysbiosis. I mean, the list goes on. I could give you my old diagnoses, but they don't matter anymore. It was just really, really awful. I also had a lot of intestinal parasites that ended up being one of my root causes that I figured out kind of earlier this year. So, I had a lot going on with me. And if you could have seen the amount of supplements that I used to have to take just to feel bleh, just to have like any kind of quality of life, I think you'd be shocked. Like, it was just a ton of stuff, but it's what I needed at that time. And, I think some of it was probably overkill, but it's also, you reach a point of desperation in your healing journey where you're like, I just want to feel better, So a lot of supplements. Same was true with pharmaceuticals. I was on a lot of pharmaceuticals, some of which I'm still trying to get off of. Some of the pharmaceuticals I were on were narcotics. Now, that point in my life, before I went through everything I went through, I definitely needed them. I was taking 2 benzodiazepines. I was taking Xanax for panic and anxiety, and then I was also taking Restoril, the highest milligram dosage, every night for sleep, because if I didn't take it, I just didn't sleep. And you gotta sleep. You can't not sleep. I was also smoking marijuana, which was recommended by one of my old doctors to help with my PTSD symptoms, help manage pain, bring my appetite back, because with all my GI issues, I just didn't want to eat. And also, insomnia as well. So that was a part of my life. I was taking kratom to manage pain because I struggle to find the words to express to you the amount of pain I lived with on a day-to-day basis. So I have a lot of damage to my spine from an old car accident. I had Lyme disease. I had CIRS from the toxic mold exposure, GI parasites. I wasn't really moving very much. I mean, there were just so much feeding into the whole pain thing. So, I took kratom every day to help manage my pain, and I did all of that just to be okay, because I didn't like being in my skin. Just to be okay with it, or just to not even have it register that, you're present, because it hurt. It hurt so bad. So that's kind of where I was at the beginning of 2025. It was not a good place. I had a lot of brain inflammation issues. So I just, I'd get an idea in my head and it would be totally wrong. It was awful. It was truly awful. I didn't really leave the house much either, because how are you going to leave the house when you feel like garbage all the time? Socializing was kind of out of the question. You don't feel well enough to go sit down at a restaurant. It sounds good in theory. Then you try it and you're like, get me home, please. So yeah, that's pretty much where I started off 2025. I'd had some successes. I was very hopeful. The ThyroPep, which you'll see right here to the left of me, was my first, cue that, hey, you do have hypothyroidism. You need to do something for your thyroid. So, my thyroid journey started in 2024, and then it really took off this year. So let's get into this year. So we're going to start here with Rapid Liver Reset, which is a program from Detox Rejuvenation, which is the same place that I attended the Rapid Gut Reset. Now, these are all online programs. You can go through at your own pace. Typically, what happens is a module will open up once a week. You can go through, you can interact on the forum. It's just a really awesome kind of experience. The thing that I like about all of these programs that I did was that they aren't dependent on diagnosis or medical condition. So really anyone can benefit from these programs, because really what it's about is cleaning up the terrain of your body. There's also this really intelligent layering of supplements in these programs that they, first they support the terrain, they clean up the terrain, then they start slowly building in and addressing the issues that are giving you these symptoms that are so unbearable. So that was definitely the case with Rapid Liver Reset. Rapid Liver Reset is for liver and gallbladder stagnation. It also includes some nervous system support, which I feel that Detox Rejuvenation has done an absolutely phenomenal job with every program I've had from them. I love their stuff. But their nervous system support work is so key to healing, and it's such a big deal, and it's majority of the time it's forgotten. It's not even addressed, at least not for me. I haven't had many functional integrative doctors, naturopaths, or even especially conventional doctors that say, yeah, you need to help regulate your nervous system so you can heal. I just hadn't heard it before. So Rapid Liver Reset, I definitely had liver stagnation issues. It improved my digestion. It helped with the bloating. I felt clearer, less toxic. Just a lot of improvements. And honestly, if I could run through some of these programs again now, I would. So very pleased with Rapid Liver Reset. And you know what's cool about these programs too is they're not very long, because I swear it was like maybe a month or two later, I'm going into their next program, which is called Rapid Energy Reset. I learned a lot about myself in this program. The chief thing I learned about myself was your energy issues are not 100% from your old diagnosis of adrenal insufficiency. And that kind of blew my mind, because my old doctor always believed that my energy issues were from my adrenal issues. And that's simply not the case. So Rapid Energy Reset focuses on supporting mitochondrial health and also drainage support, which I had problems with both of those things. And I was kind of amazed at this sense of just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like this deep sense of energy in you, and you feel, I don't know, just more capable of taking on life, more capable of healing. You can't heal if you're depleted like that. Like, it's impossible. Your body needs energy to heal. You know, healing is not a pleasant linear experience. It's jagged and tiring and exhausting, at times painful. It's you need energy to get through something like that. So went through Rapid Energy Reset, and then moved into this one, which is Rapid Parasite Release. Oh my God. So it turned out to be one of my root causes is intestinal parasites. I didn't even know I had them. I've had at least one stool kit for parasites, and it came back negative. I've had several stool kits to, check out my microbiome, see what's going on in there. And it's like, I could tell you my old diagnoses, but they don't matter really in this. They don't. So I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but I will tell you that, intestinal parasites were one of my root causes. The course is insanely effective. All of their programs are insanely comprehensive. I think the two most comprehensive courses, in my opinion, or at least the most helpful, were Rapid Gut Reset and then Rapid Parasite Release. Because in Rapid Parasite Release, you get to learn about all the critters that are probably inside of you. And here's the thing. Even if you have decent digestion, you may still have a parasite or two, because parasites are everywhere. They are literally everywhere. They're in our food, they're on our hands, our pets have them. They have evolved alongside of us. They are living organisms, which means they fight back, which means you need to have an intelligent way to combat them. And that's definitely what you get in Rapid Parasite Release. I'm so glad I found these programs, but it was also traumatizing, and I'm not quite over it. So we're going to move on. So after Rapid Parasite Release, I moved into the Heart Mind Institute up there. So the Heart Mind Institute was awesome. It supports my meditation practice, my interpersonal growth. I really like what they're doing, man. I really do. They have weekly meditation meetups, which has offered me a social outlet during a part of my life that should honestly be the most lonely and isolating part I've ever been through, because that's what complex chronic illness does, or even just chronic illness in general. You are alone almost every day. You may see whoever you live with, but you're not leaving the house much. You're not going to dinner with friends. For me, it means I couldn't work. I couldn't drive. I couldn't go, for long walks. It's so isolating. So to be able to have these Zoom meetings, I can jump on once a week. I can meditate with a bunch of people who also meditate. We can talk about whatever's been going on that week, get support for things, people to talk to. It's been amazing. So it's really kind of fed that kind of social part of me, and also kind of my spiritual part with the whole healing process. So very grateful for the Heart Mind Institute in my membership. I also have access with the membership to like an entire library of meditations or summits or any of the talks that they've done. It's awesome. I really have enjoyed it. Also, around the time that I went into the Heart Mind Institute, I did a peptide cycle with something called Can't Wait from Integrative Peptides, and much like its namesake, that's why I took it. I can't wait to lose the weight. So what this peptide does is it turns down the volume knob on your hunger signals. So while you're taking it, you just don't get hungry. Like, it really, really dampens that kind of gnawing hunger that you would normally feel, like especially intermittent fasting or anything like that. It made my fasts a lot easier. I also ate a lot less because I was less hungry. When you eat less, you have your caloric intake drops, and it's just so much easier to lose weight. And because of that cycle, I dropped down to my next goal weight of 140 pounds. So I was able to lose some weight. Now, what I also did right around the same time was I did another cycle of ThyroPep, and I added in a product called Thyroid Fixer, which is a T2 hormone. And what that does is it helps to support energy and also boosts your metabolism. So it's easier to lose weight. So between, the Can't Wait, the ThyroPep, and supporting my thyroid, I was able to continue to lose weight throughout the year. After I was done with ThyroPep, I also added in a thyroid glandular product from the Fixer line, the same brand that created Thyroid Fixer. And, I stayed on that for like the remainder of 2025. I just ran out not too long ago. As far as the Thyroid Fixer, the T2, I still have a bottle over there. So I still take some, like, when I have a morning that I'm feeling really tired, or I know I'm going to have a long day, I'll take one, and it really does help with energy and keeps you going and increases your metabolism. So I had some really good experiences with these products. This one I didn't add to the board because, frankly, I've run out of room. But shortly after, I went through Can't Wait, ThyroPep, and when I started Thyroid Fixer, the next month I started microdosing psilocybin for my complex PTSD, and I found that it really did help with my PTSD symptoms, and it helped me kind of process a lot of old things. It also helped with a lot of the pain I was feeling that was originating from like inflammation. So from CIRS, it helped with that. It helped with my cognition too. So it was easier for me to focus. I could focus for longer lengths of time without fatigue. And it was just overall a really good move for me. I initially started with using the Fadiman protocol, but then I realized that the benefit that I received from the microdosing was so great that I wanted to, take it more often. So, I would take it several days in a row, then a few days off, and I would just listen to my body. Whenever my body said, hey, you should take a microdose in the morning, that's what I would do. So it's been really helpful. Now, with where I am now, I don't necessarily microdose all the time anymore. I'm not on a protocol or anything like that. I'll take it when I feel like I need it because it does help with the brain inflammation and pain, down my spine and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's not an all the time thing with me anymore. So I feel like I've received a lot of benefits from microdosing. And of course, I will at some point cycle back off when I feel I need to. Around this time was also when I started getting into some Joe Dispenza stuff. I watched his Rewired series and I started meditating with him on Gaia. Now, the Rewired series for me was insanely valuable because, how do I say this? So when you live with traumatic brain injury that's as bad as mine was for as long as I did, and then you wake up, you don't understand yourself. You don't understand what belief systems are. You don't understand how they form, how to change them, what they mean, any of that. And that Rewired series really, really hit home for me and helped me to understand some of that stuff. And once you can understand some of it, you can learn to change it and how to direct it in a way that might be more beneficial for you. So I really enjoyed Joe Dispenza's work. I think that I feel like the things that I've learned from him in the meditation practice was amazing, especially for days that I was in a lot of pain. I would do his meditation practice on Gaia, and it just helps because he's asking you to focus outside of your body as opposed to into. And there were days where I swear it was like that was the happiest I was when I was working on his meditations. Around this time, I also found out that I could start using nicotine as a nootropic. So I started taking Knick-Knack Naturals, and I still to this day, like, nicotine really, really helps me to think more clearly. And, so I'm glad that I figured that part out for nicotine as a nootropic, because it really was very helpful, especially during this part of my healing process when I was still living in mold and it was still very hard for me to focus. Next, I didn't add this stuff to my board either. I've run out of space. I need to reorganize it. But around July, I added in Dr. Love's Roar Lion's Mane to kind of help my memory and, hopefully improve some of my TBI symptoms, everything like that. And it worked great. I really love it. I still have some. I'll still take it from time to time, but it's, again, one of those things that I just don't need every day anymore. I also started taking a product called Life Restore, or Zonia's Life Restore, which I was taking for vitality, energy, and just like, to feel kind of like lively again. When you're sick, you feel like garbage all the time, and it did help. I did start feeling this kind of deep sense of vitality that's really kind of hard to describe. It also helped with blood sugar regulation with the added berberine, kind of mixed in. So around this time, I also started an essential tremors clinical trial from BioInsights and Approved Medical Solutions. And this clinical trial was involved drinking little containers of ketones in the morning while you fasted. And I was kind of shocked at how well that worked. I used to have this tremor in my right hand where my right hand would kind of do this. And it was intermittent. It wasn't all the time, but I also kind of had these kind of jerky, spastic kind of movements with my muscles and problems with coordination. I'd be walking through a doorway, I'd hit the side of the doorway, and it wasn't intentional. It would kind of come and go. And the thing that scared me about it was that I lost my father to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's back in 2020. So I was really, really looking forward to the clinical trial to see if it helped. And it really did. It relieved a lot of those symptoms. And honestly, if those symptoms wouldn't have gone away on their own, I would still be taking those ketones because they really did help. So right around July was when I also moved out of the mold. And it took a long time for me to get to this point. I had to detox. It's a lot of Epsom salt baths, binders, all of that. I was taking Pectosol, which I absolutely love Pectosol, because down here when I was still living in mold, I had this like trifecta of binders that I was taking, and it was Pectosol from Econugenics, and then also Cellcore Carboxy and Energy Bits Chlorella. And I loved those three together. Like, that was the only way that I could get through living in the mold, was with that many binders. And, I stayed on the Pectosol for a while because I really liked the way it made me feel. And it came with me when I left there. So I stayed on it, and it really did help me detox some. So moving out of the mold, I feel, was key. Then shortly after, it would have been like about August or so, I started the Gupta program here, which is a brain retraining program for people who've had chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm still working on that program, but I will say that the bit that I did get through did help, because it is something that you do have to, like, illness is not just a body thing, it's also a mind thing, because your mind learns that you're sick through being sick. So I really feel like the brain retraining was a good step for me, and I recently opened it back up, so I'm going to go back into it to see if maybe I can get, tweak things up a little bit and get a little better, more better. So really liked the Gupta program. I also started taking a look at some of the darker parts of myself that I've never really looked at. I guess it's called your shadow self. And for that, I used a program called Work with Shadow, and that was amazing. I love that program. Again, though, life has kind of gotten in the way, and I've had to hit pause on both of those programs, but the bit of work that I did do was insanely insightful. Work with Shadow, it really asks a lot of really poignant questions about, just why you are the way that you are. And it's deep work where you've really got to be prepared for, opening that site up and getting in there and dealing with some of those questions. And some of it, makes you remember things that you really wish, you could have forgotten, but it's worth it. You know, healing is never a straight line. It's never pleasant. And a lot of times it takes taking a look at some of the darker parts of yourself that you would rather really not deal with. Now we're going to move into September. September was one hell of a month. My God. Okay, so I got to the point where I had healed enough where it was time for me to come off of all the narcotics. And I had tried coming off the benzodiazepines. They're very difficult to come off of. And doing a really slow taper with your doctor can take months, years, depending on how much you're taking. So when I found out that I could get off of benzodiazepines with a 10-day taper, if I checked myself in somewhere, I definitely checked myself in somewhere. So while I was there, I was able to get off of the Xanax, the Restoril, the kratom, and the marijuana. And it was brutal. It was not easy. And the anxiety that and the pause that lingered after that was just awful. You know, after I got out, I created kind of my own post-acute withdrawal syndrome treatment plan where I was alternating microdosing a peptide called cerebropep from Integrative Peptides. That peptide is the oral form of cerebrolysin and is the product that healed my brain damage enough to bring me back to where I am today. I was microdosing it. I was taking half capsules or quarter capsules. I was taking it one day on, like 2-3 days off. On the days that I was off, I was microdosing psilocybin alongside of taking Dr. Love's Roar Lion's Mane, and it definitely sped things up. Like, I can tell you where I sit right now. I feel that the pause is pretty much gone, save maybe some insomnia, but that could also be from my really awful nighttime habits of staring at my phone, or it could be from just having insomnia for 20 years. I don't know, but I'm going to start putting together a better nighttime routine because what I'm doing isn't working. And we'll see what happens after that. But yeah, September was crazy because while I was in that facility, I also was re-exposed to toxic mold from the facility. There was more toxic mold in that place than I've ever seen in my entire life. It was growing all over the ceiling in one of the common areas where you line up to get your meds at the med station, and then it was also all over the ceiling and in the ductwork, in the cafeteria, and the other common area. So there was literally nowhere you could go other than your room that didn't have visible toxic mold growing on the ceiling. Of course, you could go outside too, but you get what I'm saying. It was everywhere. And once it's in the ductwork in one place, this is what I learned from the place that I actually got exposed at, it's everywhere. You just don't see it. And that's the scary part about mold, is you don't have to see it. It's probably there. So that almost brings us up to now. Not much has happened from nothing. There's really not much new stuff to report between here and now. I spent a long time. I think I was bedbound for about 3 weeks after I got out of that facility from the mold exposure. So it took a really long time of taking care of myself to detox enough to where, I could start feeling better again. And then I got re-exposed to toxic mold again from my water distiller. At least it was a small amount. I just can't escape this stuff. So yeah, but I will say this, like, come November was my birthday, was when my birthday was. And I have healed enough now to where I was actually able to have a piece of birthday cake without having any kind of reaction. Like, there was no reaction to the gluten or the sugar or nothing. Like, that's the first time I've been able to do that in almost a decade. So that's a huge deal for me. So I think if I was to jump up to now, and I was to talk a little bit about where I am now, I can tell you that if you would have told me when I first started this channel that where I am now is possible, I would have told you were nuts, because I didn't even know that I could get to this point. I didn't know this point existed. So let me explain. So I'm able to work consistently now. I can focus, I can remember things, I'm just more present, I'm off all of the narcotics, I'm getting off of a lot of the other prescription drugs that I take. My supplements, instead of taking like 20 or 30, I take maybe a handful, and it's not really consistent other than the hormone replacement and the active B12 folate for my MTHFR gene mutation. And yeah, I take some magnesium at night, and it's just, I don't need it. And I just don't need all that stuff anymore. You know, I eat really well. I'm able to eat dairy now. I can eat cheese. I can drink coffee, which I couldn't do before. I even put cream in my coffee. It's wonderful. It's part of my morning routine. You know, it's just have a cup of coffee, and I'm starting to feel like a normal human being again. It's crazy. You know, I feel like I did before I hit my head in 2006, but better because I understand myself on a deeper level, you know? So yeah, I had, like, since my last weekly update, I had a day where I got over 11,000 steps in one day. Wasn't sore, wasn't tired the next day. Yesterday I had a 8,000 step day, and I feel fine today. Actually, I feel better today than I did before I exercised. So I can feel my body starting to power back on. I'm working on, you know, embracing this change as positive. It's such an enormous shift in my life to have things go well for once, so well that I can even start thinking about my future, like what I want to do, like dreaming about things, or you know, looking at schools to finish my degree, like normal people stuff, you know, not being so broken and wore down that you have to focus all your energy on this moment right here so you can figure out how to survive and make it to tomorrow. I don't have to be dependent on 50 million doctors, or even just one doctor. Like I just don't need to, you know? So that's kind of where I am now. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed with that. I don't think so. I'm actually happy for the first time in a very, very, very long time. And I'm really looking forward to kind of what direction things are going to go in for me. You know, and yeah, it's good. It's really good. And, you know, what's next? Well, the neurometabolic roadmap, I mean, that's what's next. Next up is inflammation. So probably CIRS and addressing the colonization of mold that I'm 100% sure I have in me. And for the CIRS, I have a peptide stack I'm going to do, and then I'll just keep working my way up. And what's crazy is I'm asking myself, like, as I'm saying this, I'm asking myself, is like, can you imagine feeling any better than you will once you handle the CIRS and the mold exposure? And I can't. So moving forward, it's just going to be a lot more happy surprises. And if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Happy holidays, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.